Welcome to Hard Talk. I'm Stephen Sacker. For good or ill, Donald Trump dominates the American political landscape. He seems to relish conflict because it keeps him firmly and forever center stage. So, with vital congressional midterm elections looming this autumn, how should Democrats respond? Well, my guest is Jaime Harrison, Associate Chair of the Democratic National Committee. Not so long ago, his party was predicting a midterm wave that would sweep away Republican control of Congress. But are the Democrats underestimating the power of Trumpian politics? Jaime Harrison in Columbia, South Carolina. Welcome to Hard Talk.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you for having me.
Just a few months back, one of the most senior Democrats in the Senate, Chuck Schumer, said this. He said, "I smell a wave coming." And it did seem at that point that the Democrats were absolutely convinced that they were going to sweep away the Republicans in Congress. Are you just as confident of that today?
I feel really good about our chances this fall. We've done extremely well in a lot of state legislative races. We've flipped 43 seats that were Republican, and they're now Democratic. And I think the momentum is on our side, and we need to just continue to push, continue to build our operations, and I think we're going to be in good shape come this November.
Yeah, but if you look at the most recent polling evidence, Donald Trump's popularity, his approval rating, is slowly but surely on the rise through the early 40s to the mid 40 percentage points. It's actually now pretty much at the same point where Obama's was in the same period of his presidency. That must concern you.
It doesn't. You remember in 2010, in terms of where Obama was, that's when the Republicans took control of the House of Representatives. And so actually, if you take a look at history, history is on the side of the Democratic Party, the minority party that is out of control, out of power. It's on our side. And so I feel really good and really bullish. In 2006, I was the executive director for the House Democratic Caucus. That was when Democrats took back the House and took back the Senate when George W. Bush was in the second year of his second term. And so many of the same things that I saw then are some of the similar trends that I see now. I think, again, Democrats are in really good shape as we move into the fall election.
Interesting to look at those states, swing states, we've always called them, where races are always tight. Look at Ohio, for example. It's not clear what exactly is going to happen when the final votes are counted in that 12th congressional district, which so many eyes have been on in the last few days. But Democrats, just a day or two ago, seemed pretty convinced they could take that particular congressional seat, and it looks as though the Republicans have stemmed that tide. Again, complacency is going to be a problem for you guys, isn't it?
No, I don't think so. And listen, I'm pretty excited about the results in that race. Take a look at this particular seat. The incumbent in 2016 won the seat by 30 points. Donald Trump won the seat by 11 points. Right now, it's razor thin. We're not sure of the end result, but in the end, the Republicans have spent $5 million to hold on to a seat in which their president won by 11 points. And it's a razor thin margin. So it's one of those things where, and there are 70 other seats that are better for Democrats than this seat.
Yeah,
we want a seat.
All right, we could go through area by area and discuss the specific sort of political balance in various different states. But the nationwide picture surely is pretty simple. It's hard for you guys in the Democratic Party to overturn Republican majorities in the House and Senate when we see that a Republican Congress and a Republican president are supervising an economy that is motoring ahead, with growth rates now put at over 4%, with record high employment levels, and where even African American and Latino unemployment is at record lows. These are the realities, the facts that make it very attractive for Americans to stick with what they know.
Well, there are also some realities and facts that you didn't put in there. One, Donald Trump in this current tariff war that he's trying to engage in right now, you got farmers in many of the states that he won that are really, really concerned. Just recently here in South Carolina, one of the plants in a rural county, county that, again, Donald Trump won in the presidential election, just announced that they're closing because of his tariffs. We have factories like BMW and Volvo that are headquarters here in South Carolina. South Carolina's the tire manufacturing headquarters of America, with Michelin and Continental and a lot of other folks. A lot of other companies, and they're all concerned about these possible tariffs and the impact that it could have on the economy.
You may choose to look at the glass half empty, but many Americans look at the glass half full. How about this? High-wage manufacturing jobs up 37,000 in June alone. 400,000 quality manufacturing jobs created under the Trump administration, and worker pay rises now running at the highest since 2008.
Well, listen, Stephen, again, it's not about how I'm looking at it. With such, quote-unquote, fabulous numbers for Donald Trump, why isn't he over 50%? If the economy and everything is working so well in this country, he's still dealing with the low 40s in terms of his percentage rates. And his popularity in a lot of the states that he won has declined over a period of time. Republicans are starting to run away from him because of his rhetoric and some of the impact that it could have on the economies here. Again, I'm much happier being where we are now going to the midterms than to be where the Republicans are. We are outraising some of our Democratic people who are running for the first time are outraising Republican incumbents in these congressional districts. That is unheard of. And it's part of the fact is that people are very concerned about the direction that America is going to.
Well,
they don't like the hateful rhetoric.
You keep telling me. I look at a UBS Investor Watch survey, which found that 70% of the businesses they surveyed believed that China trade was unfair and supported Donald Trump's stand imposing tariffs on China. And let's be honest about this. The Democratic Party's position on trade and tariffs is pretty unclear anyway, because we all remember that in the last presidential election, Bernie Sanders and a whole bunch of very important Democratic supporters of his actually supported tearing up the various trade deals, including the Trans-Pacific trade deal and NAFTA. So the Democratic Party's position on this is all over the map.
Well, the Democratic Party position is, listen, we understand that it's important to have healthy companies, because then healthy companies, strong companies, also have can provide benefits for the workers. We believe in making sure that we protect the rights of workers. We believe in making sure that there's opportunity here for workers. We don't believe in starting tariff wars and trade wars and not having any strategy or direction for why we're doing it. I mean, Donald Trump wakes up one morning and says, you know what, I guess I'm going to have a trade war with this company, and I'm going to specifically target this industry because I just decided I want to do that.
Hang on, in all honesty,
that is not how...
Let's leave partisan politics out of it. For you, you're a guy who's worked in politics in various positions, not just in Washington, but out in the country as well. Do you honestly think that a steel worker, let's say sitting in Michigan, when he hears Donald Trump say, and this is a quote from Trump, "We have achieved an economic turnaround of historic proportions. We are now the economic envy of the entire world." Do you think that steel worker is going to find it easy to vote against Donald Trump, given what has happened to the growth and success of the steel industry in recent months in America?
Yeah, but the steel industry is just one industry of many. I live in South Carolina where agriculture is huge, and these possible tariffs on soybeans. I can leave this building right now and drive down the road and see just miles and miles of soybean farms. And, guess who's a big consumer of the soybean farms here in South Carolina? It's China. And now Donald Trump created a problem, and his solution is, well, because I've created this tariff war problem, I'm going to find $12 billion to give the farmers. They don't want that. What they want is stability in terms of being able to figure out how much can I plant, how much will I get, so that they can plan accordingly.
You're a political strategist, both in South Carolina and nationwide with your advisory role with the DNC. Would you agree with me that what matters in politics is being on the front foot? It's making the political weather. It's being proactive. And right now, surely there is no debate. Donald Trump is making the political weather. He is on the front foot, and the Democrats are constantly having to play defense and react.
No, not really. Listen, Donald Trump has been, in some ways, has been good for the Democratic Party. He's been our best recruiter. We have not seen so much excitement and recruitment in terms of the Democratic Party in a generation until we had this president and the disaster that he calls upon every day here in the United States. I mean, he's an embarrassment both domestically and internationally. And so there has to be a change in this country, and people are yearning for that. And we're going to see it in November.
Important point you just made, embarrassment. Why is it embarrassing to be a politician who keeps his promises, who promises to get tough on immigration and follows through, who promises to get tough on unfair trade and follows through, who promises to get tough on NATO allies who don't meet their commitments on expenditure on defense and then follows through? If you can look at Trump's policies on a whole raft of different issues, he has pretty much kept to his election pledges. Why is that embarrassing?
Well, one of his pledge, and I think the hallmark of his pledge, was that he was going to build a wall and Mexico was going to pay for it. The last time I haven't seen one peso from Mexico come to the United States to pay for a wall, but I have heard of him whining and threatening to shut down the American government because Congress has not appropriated money in order to build a wall. So, if you want to take a promise, that was at the heart of the Donald Trump campaign. And again, he has no plan for he just says things and has no plan for how to do it. There are fundamental things that make us American. There are fundamental things, liberty and freedom and openness. To see what Donald Trump has done on the border in terms of separating families is inhumane. Absolutely inhumane to see what he has done and to see the problems that he's created, and he has no solution for how to fix them.
But
even his own daughter has critiqued the policy.
My point about proactive politics is that Donald Trump puts you on the back foot. You make the points you've just made about his immigration policy. He then accuses you of running an open-door policy, letting criminals come in and, to use his word, which I wouldn't use, but he used it, to infest the United States of America. He makes those messages a core campaign issue, and a lot of Americans who are worried about immigration, they may not like his language, but they hear a Democratic Party that seems to be defending open borders and Donald Trump who says he'll get tough on immigration. Do you really believe that in political terms you're on the right side of that argument?
Oh, I know we're on the right side of the argument, and we will see it in November. Let me tell you, what Donald Trump is doing to the Republican Party is killing this party in the long term. It is not going to be good. He is splintering the party like no other. Again, almost a secret weapon for the Democratic Party, for what he's going to do in terms of breaking that party up. This is a man who attacks every bit of our democracy, every fundamental anchor of our democracy, from freedom of the press to he goes after the judiciary, he goes after Congress and their role, and he's blistering in that. And at the same time, again, you talked earlier about him keeping promises. Well, he went over and had this huge summit with Kim Jong-un and said, oh, we're going to do all of this stuff. And what has happened? Nothing. He's foot buddies with Putin, and all of these great things. I have never seen an American president who has kowtowed to Russia as much as this president has. Again, in the end of the day,
Interesting. Sorry to interrupt, Jamie. Sorry to interrupt, Jaime Harrison. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you got onto Russia there, and it does seem to me there's a very interesting proposition before the American people right now as they look at politics and the looming midterm elections. They have to decide whether they want to vote for Democratic control of the House and the Senate, which could then lead to much ramped up investigation of Donald Trump, because we have seen senior Democrats, including leading politicians in the Democratic caucus in the House of Representatives, saying that they want an impeachment resolution brought before the House. One Congressman, James Rankin of Maryland, said the other day, it is hard to think of a more impeachable president in American history. Do you also agree the Democrats, as part of their electoral strategy, should focus on the potential for impeaching the president?
I don't think we need to go down the impeachment road at this point. I think what needs to happen is that Mueller needs to continue his investigation to see whether there was any collusion, to see whether there was any obstruction of justice, and then we'll proceed from that point. We're just going to call Donald Trump what he is. I mean, this is a guy who has had bigoted, racist, intolerant language, and he's president of the United States. He is not the model. I can't point to, and listen, I've had disagreements with George W. Bush in the past. I grew up during the Reagan era, and yeah, I might not have liked their policies, but I always had respect for the office and respect for the individuals that sat in that chair. Donald Trump is very, very different. I don't think we've ever seen anything like this in American politics.
What do you think? What do you think those millions
diminished us as a result?
Right. What do you think those millions of particularly white working class Americans who voted for Donald Trump and who, according to every single opinion poll, are still foursquare behind Donald Trump, what do you think they make of people like you describing Trump's policies as racist and bigoted? Because it makes me mindful of Hillary Clinton during the campaign calling Trump supporters the basket of deplorables. It doesn't seem that you Democrats have a way of connecting with the white working class in the way that Donald Trump does.
Well, see, that's the difference. I don't think Donald Trump, yes, the core of the Republican base is very solid and still behind Donald Trump. But Trump was also able to win some swing independent votes that I believe fundamentally won't be there for him this next time around. And you will see that in terms of the results of the November election. Those are those individuals in some of the white suburbs in America who decided, well, you know what, let me take a chance. Let me see if there's something different here. And I don't think they like what they see. And so in the end of the day, I think those folks are going to side with the Democratic Party. Those folks may be fiscally conservative, but they're socially more moderate. And they don't like the rhetoric. They don't like the divisiveness. They don't like the things and the images that they see coming out of this White House.
But equally, again, they are not people. They are not these voters we're talking about now. You call them swing voters or centrists or whatever. They are certainly not Americans who, I think it is fair to say, would ever identify themselves as socialists. But what we see in your party, and let's now really focus on your party, what we see in your party today is that the most dynamic elements in the party, including, of course, very well-known recent victors like Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez in a nomination race in New York, they are describing themselves as socialist, and the party appears to be veering pretty rapidly to the left. Is that going to win you national elections?
What I'm seeing, and I know that there are a lot of folks that the media is covering, but what I'm seeing are folks who are going into districts and winning districts based on, it's that old adage that all politics is local. based on understanding the people in their districts.
Do you think Democrats, hang on, you're slightly avoiding my question. Do you think Democrats who go into elections describing themselves as proud socialists, is that going to be a winning strategy for the party?
Well, how many people do you see, how many Democrats do you see going into elections describing themselves as proud socialists?
Well, perhaps, you know, when I talk about making the political weather, perhaps the woman who is doing most right now to inject dynamism into your party is this young woman, 28 years old, who won that extraordinary victory in New York in a primary race against one of your most established congressmen. And she did it by pushing a very aggressively, or I should say assertively, left-wing socialist agenda.
She won in a Democratic, in a very, very blue Democratic district. But there have been other people who've also won in a lot of other districts. Connor Lamb, who won in Pennsylvania in a district that that is ruby red. Doug Jones, who I helped in Alabama, in a state that is as conservative as South Carolina. I don't think they labeled themselves as Democratic Socialists. But what I said, which I'm going back to, is people are running in states and in districts and reflecting the values of the folks that they are claiming and wanting to represent. And that's what we're going to see in 435 districts and in 50 states this November.
See, I just wonder,
people are going to reflect the people on the local level. And so in New York and in the Bronx, you could win as a Democratic Socialist. That's fine. But in South Carolina, that probably is not going to work. I can guarantee you that.
I hear what you're saying.
But in the end of the day,
I just wonder whether you've learned the lessons of.
The Democratic Party is a Big Tent.
Have you learned the lessons of losing in 2016? Because let us not forget, you, Jaime Harrison, were a supporter of Hillary Clinton. You, Jaime Harrison, were part of that Democratic establishment. You worked as a lobbyist for John Podesta, who, of course, was very close to Hillary Clinton. You are seen by people like. Hang on. You are seen by people like Bernie Sanders, frankly, as part of the problem, not the solution for the Democratic Party. So who really is the Democratic Party today?
Well, I think I embodied a Democratic Party. You know, my mom was 16 years old when she had me here in South Carolina. I grew up in a very rural town, Orangeburg, 15,000 people. I was the first person in my family to go to college ever. Went to Yale, went to Georgetown, worked myself up from bootstraps, helped my parents save their home, bought a home for my grandparents. That's what the American dream's all about, is being able to start from nothing and to actually rise up and do well in this country. And so I'm proud of what I am, and I am who I am because of the Democratic Party.
The message of Donald Trump is that politics as usual isn't working in America anymore, and that's a message that the Democrats have to take on board as well as the Republicans.
Well, the message that the Democratic Party has to, and I've been very, very honest, and let me back up. You mentioned I worked for John Podesta. I never worked for John. I actually worked for his brother, Tony, but just to make sure that I was clear on that. But in terms of the message for the Democratic Party, you know, yes, we are in this race and in this game against the Republican Party. But where the Democratic Party has to fundamentally change, and that's what I'm working on with the DNC, is that the Democratic Party can no longer just be a political organization. It has to be more of a community organization, where we're actually on the ground in these communities helping people address the issues that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. That's the utility of the Democratic Party, and that's where we have to go back to so that we can become the party of the people once again. And so we're working on reforms and things that we can do that we become more grassroots based, that we are actually in communities addressing issues that are so important for people in order so that they can live the American dream and that their kids still have the hope of living the American dream as well.
Jaime Harrison, I wish we could go on, but we're out of time. Thank you very much for joining me from South Carolina.
Thank you, Stephen.